My name's Savannah Brooks, and I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd lose her cool over a wedding dress. But one afternoon, standing in a Charleston bridal boutique, I stared into the mirror and felt my heart crack. Instead of the sleek, off-the-shoulder gown I'd spent months choosing, a dress that made me feel like I could conquer the world, I was drowning in a heavy, lace-choked relic from another century. The high collar scratched my neck, the yellowed fabric smelled of mothballs, and the weight of it pressed down like a warning. My future mother-in-law, Margaret Wentworth, Maggie to her high society friends, stood behind me, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Isn't it breathtaking?" Maggie said, her voice thick with southern charm. "My great-grandmother wore this dress in 1890. 4 generations of Wentworth brides have walked down the aisle in it. Caleb will be so proud to see you carry on our tradition." The boutique owner, Miss Clara, fidgeted with the dress's endless train, avoiding my eyes. Her nervous hands told me everything. Maggie had orchestrated this swap, probably with a flash of her wealth and a few well-placed words. I'd grown up in a small Georgia town, scraping by with my mom after my dad left us when I was 6. I'd fought for every opportunity: art school, my graphic design career, a new life in Charleston. That dress, the one I'd chosen, was more than fabric. It was my promise to myself that I'd never let anyone make me feel small again. And now, Maggie had taken it. "Where's my dress?" I asked, my voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. Maggie waved a manicured hand. "Oh, darling, I had them return it. That modern thing was all wrong for a Wentworth wedding. Too flashy. This is timeless, perfect for St. Philip's Church." I caught Miss Clara's glance in the mirror. She looked away, guilty. My hands shook as I reached for my phone to call Caleb, but Maggie's grip on my wrist stopped me cold. Her nails, polished to perfection, dug into my skin. "Let's not bother Caleb," Maggie said, her tone sweet but edged with steel. "He's at the office, and he trusts my judgment on these matters." That's when I saw it, the glint in her eyes, like she'd won a game I didn't even know we were playing. This wasn't about tradition. This was about control, who got to decide my future, my wedding, my life. Growing up, I'd watched my mom bend under the weight of other people's expectations, and I'd sworn I'd never do the same. But standing there, suffocating in Maggie's family heirloom, I felt that old fear creeping in. What if I wasn't strong enough to fight her? I forced a smile, my lips tight. "You're right, Maggie. Let me take a moment to admire the details." Her eyes narrowed, sensing something, but she nodded and swept out of the fitting room, her heels clicking on the hardwood. Alone, I pulled out my phone and snapped photos of every outdated stitch, every suffocating layer. Then I texted Tessa, "You won't believe what Maggie's done. Meet me at the Rusty Anchor in 30. Bring whiskey." Staring at my reflection, I made a choice. Maggie wanted to play games, but I wasn't a small-town girl. She thought she could steamroll. I'd fought too hard to let her rewrite my story. If she wanted a battle, I'd give her one, and I'd play to win. Later that evening, I paced the living room of the downtown Charleston apartment I shared with Caleb, my bare feet slapping against the hardwood. The photos of Maggie's dress still burned in my phone, but it was her words, "Caleb trusts my judgment," that kept replaying in my head. I'd waited hours for Caleb to get home from his job at Wentworth Properties, Maggie's real estate empire. When he finally walked in, tie loosened and laptop in hand, I didn't hold back. "Your mom swapped my wedding dress for some ancient family relic," I said, crossing my arms. "I spent months finding the perfect gown, and she just erased it, without asking me." Caleb barely looked up from his laptop. "Savannah, come on. Mom's just trying to make the wedding special. You know how much family tradition means to her." "Special?" I stopped pacing, my voice rising. "She didn't ask me, Caleb. She went behind my back. This isn't about tradition, it's about her calling the shots." He sighed, closing his laptop with a snap. "Look, maybe we can compromise. Wear her dress for the ceremony, then change into yours for the reception. Problem solved." Before I could argue, my phone buzzed. A text from Maggie. "Darling, I've updated the guest list with some key Charleston families. Don't worry about the extra costs. Wentworth Properties will cover it. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. I thrust the phone at Caleb. See this? She's not just picking my dress. She's rewriting our entire wedding. And what's this about her covering costs? We agreed to split everything with your parents. Caleb's face flushed, and he stood, suddenly obsessed with rearranging the books on our coffee table. Well, with some changes at work, Mom offered to cover more. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? My voice dropped, barely a whisper. How much do we owe her, Caleb? He didn't answer, but his silence screamed the truth. I thought of Maggie's smug smile at the boutique, her nails digging into my wrist. This wasn't just about a dress or a guest list. She was buying our wedding, our future. Growing up, I'd watched my mom lose herself to debt and dead-end jobs, always at someone else's mercy. I'd promised myself I'd never let that happen to me. But here I was, tangled in Maggie's web, and Caleb couldn't, or wouldn't, see it. The doorbell rang, sharp and sudden. Caleb practically bolted to answer it, clearly desperate for an escape. I heard Maggie's voice from the hallway, smooth as sweet tea, followed by the click of her designer heels. Oh, good, you're both here. Maggie breezed in, carrying a leather planner thicker than a Bible. I've been meeting with the wedding planner, and we need to discuss changes to the ceremony. The minister at St. Philip's has concerns about your unconventional vows. I caught my reflection in the window, pale, fists clenched, and behind it, Maggie's purse, left open on the entryway table. Inside, I glimpsed a leather journal, the one she always carried to her self-care appointments. My heart raced. If Maggie was playing dirty, I needed to know exactly how far she'd go. And that journal? It might just hold the answers. One morning, during another suffocating wedding planning session at Maggie's waterfront mansion, I saw my chance. Maggie had left her purse on the kitchen island while she lectured the florist about appropriate centerpieces. My hands shook as I slipped her journal into my bag, my pulse pounding like I'd just robbed a bank. I mumbled an excuse about needing air and drove to a quiet spot by the Battery, the journal burning a hole in my passenger seat. Flipping through its pages, I felt sick. Maggie's neat handwriting laid out her playbook. Caleb's tech startup idea is reckless. Convinced him to stay at Wentworth Properties. Better for the family legacy. Another entry. Savannah's too independent. Her small-town background makes her unsuitable for Caleb. Must highlight her flaws. Worst of all, Harper's Gallery opening was a mistake. Called key buyers to cancel. Her art's too risky for our reputation. Page after page revealed Maggie's fear of losing control, rooted in her husband's death and her own mother's iron grip. She wasn't just meddling, she was orchestrating our lives like a chess game. I'd always known Maggie was particular, but this was something else. Growing up, I'd seen my mom controlled by her boss's whims, her dreams buried under someone else's rules. Maggie's journal wasn't just a record, it was a weapon, and she'd been using it to smother Caleb's dreams, Harper's talent, and my place in their family. My anger mixed with something new. Resolve. I wasn't just fighting for my wedding anymore. This was about breaking Maggie's hold on all of us. My phone buzzed. Caleb, where are you? Mom's freaking out about her missing journal. Says it's personal. I bet it was. I texted Tessa. Found Maggie's playbook. It's worse than we thought. Meet me at your place. As I drove, the journal in my lap, I knew there was no going back. Maggie had drawn a line, and I was ready to cross it. That night, I sat Caleb down in our apartment, the journal open on the coffee table. Read this, I said, pointing to the entries about his startup and my unsuitability. My heart pounded, hoping he'd see what I saw. Caleb's eyes scanned the pages, but his face hardened. You stole her private journal, Savannah? That's low. Mom's just trying to protect us. You're blowing this out of proportion. Protect us? I laughed, bitter. She killed your dream of starting your own company. She's been sabotaging Harper's art. She's trying to erase me. How is that protection? He stood, pacing. You don't get our family. She's always been there for us, especially after Dad died. You're making her the villain because you don't fit in.
His words hit like a slap.
I'd spent years building a life I was proud of, proving I was more than my small-town roots. But to Caleb, I was still an outsider, and Maggie's puppet strings were tighter than I'd realized. "If you can't see what she's doing, then I don't know if I can do this," I said, my voice breaking. "Then maybe you shouldn't," he shot back. "If you're going to attack my mom, maybe you don't belong in this family." I grabbed my bag and the journal, tears burning my eyes. "You're right. I don't belong in her cage." I left, driving to Tessa's tiny apartment in North Charleston. She poured me a whiskey and listened as I poured out everything, my hurt, my anger, my fear that I'd lost Caleb for good. "You're not the one who's lost," Tessa said, her voice fierce. "You've got the truth now. Use it." Alone in Tessa's spare room, I opened my laptop. The novel I'd been tinkering with felt pointless. Instead, I started typing something new. The day I realized my future mother-in-law was controlling our lives, I was drowning in her great-grandmother's dress. The words flowed, raw and real, fueled by every moment Maggie had tried to break me. This wasn't just a story, it was my fight, and I wasn't backing down. A few days later, I was still crashing at Tessa's, my laptop my only constant. My bank account was frozen, Maggie's doing, no doubt, citing suspicious activity. My literary agent, Lila, called, her voice tight. "Maggie's people reached out. They're pressuring me to drop your project. They're calling it slander." "Let them try," I said, my jaw set. "I'm not stopping." Tessa slid a coffee across her kitchen counter. "You're tougher than you look, Georgia girl." I smiled, but my hands shook as I typed. Maggie's reach was long. She'd even corrupted my manuscript files, leaving only fragments. But then Harper called, her voice shaking. "Mom called my biggest buyer and trashed my latest collection. Said it was too experimental for Charleston. That's why they canceled my show." I heard her kids in the background, laughing over a board game. "Harper, I found proof in her journal. She's been doing this to you for years. To Caleb, too. We can stop her." There was a pause. "I want to believe you, Savannah. But I'm scared. She's my mom." "I know," I said softly. "But your kids deserve a mom who's free to be herself. So do you." That night, Harper's kids showed up at Tessa's with a duffel bag of toys. Harper had a last-minute meeting with a new buyer, and Maggie was threatening to derail it. As I helped Lily, her 6-year-old, color a unicorn, she asked, "Why is Grandma so bossy?" I didn't have an answer, but her question lit a fire in me. This wasn't just my fight. It was for Harper, her kids, and Caleb, too. I opened my laptop and kept writing, rebuilding my memoir from memory, word by word. One evening, as I typed in Tessa's living room, the doorbell rang. Caleb stood there, his face tired but determined. "We need to talk," he said, glancing at Harper's kids building a blanket fort. "Mom's lawyer sent a cease and desist to your agent. They know about your book." I crossed my arms, the journal tucked safely in my bag. "Good. Let them try to stop me." "Savannah, this is serious," Caleb said. "Mom's willing to drop it if you apologize and return her journal." "Drop what?" Tessa cut in, stepping beside me. "The fact that she's been controlling your life? Or how she's got you so tied to her money you can't even stand up for Savannah?" Caleb's face reddened, but before he could respond, Max, Harper's 8-year-old, piped up from the fort. "Grandma says Savannah's too selfish to marry you, Uncle Caleb." The room went still. Caleb didn't correct him. That silence broke something in me. I'd loved him, dreamed of a life with him, but he was still Maggie's puppet. "Get out," I said, clutching my laptop like a lifeline. "And tell your mom I'm not apologizing. Some stories need to be told." After he left, I sat with the kids, helping them rebuild their fort. Lily crawled into my lap, playing with my engagement ring. "Why's Grandma so mean sometimes?" she asked. "She's scared," I said, surprising myself. "Sometimes people hold on too tight because they're afraid of letting go." My phone buzzed. Harper. "Buyer loved my work, but Mom called them. Meeting canceled. I'm done letting her win." I looked at the kids, their innocent faces, and my laptop, where my memoir was taking shape. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about breaking a cycle that could hurt them, too. A month later, I sat in a sleek office at Palmetto Press, my manuscript on the conference table like a ticking bomb. Across from me were Maggie, Caleb, and their lawyer, a stern man in a tailored suit. Harper sat beside me, her hands steady despite the tension. My publisher, Marcus Tate, leaned back in his chair unfazed. "This is blackmail," the lawyer snapped, pointing at my manuscript. "You're defaming a respected family." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "It's a memoir about family control, vetted by our legal team. It's compelling and true." "It's fiction," Maggie said, but her nails tapped nervously on the table. "Is it?" I pulled out my phone and played a recording from one of Maggie's self-care sessions, her voice clear. "Caleb needs my guidance, just like his father did." "Savannah's filling his head with dangerous ideas." Caleb's head snapped up. "When was this?" "Last month," I said. "Right after you signed on as junior partner at Wentworth Properties." The door opened and Harper stood, placing a USB drive on the table. "My therapy sessions, Mom, where I talked about how you sabotaged my gallery openings, my engagement, everything. I thought it was my fault until Savannah showed me your journal." Maggie's composure cracked. "I was protecting you. You were controlling us," Harper said, her voice shaking. "And I let you because I was scared. But Savannah showed me what courage looks like." Caleb stared at the table, then at me. "The San Francisco tech job 2 years ago. Did you really call them and pull my application?" Maggie's silence was deafening. Marcus slid a stack of papers forward, bank statements, emails, call logs. "The journal was just the start," I said. "I had time to dig while you were freezing my accounts." Maggie's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw fear. "What do you want?" she whispered. "Let them go," I said. "No more financial strings on Caleb or Harper. No more sabotaging her art or his dreams. Stay out of their lives unless they invite you in." "You can't prove this," Maggie said, but her voice was weak. "We can," Marcus said, nodding to the evidence. "The book publishes next month, unless you sign these." He pushed forward documents releasing Caleb's trust fund and Harper's inheritance. Maggie's hands trembled as she signed, her empire crumbling. Caleb looked at me, his eyes softer now. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't see it." I nodded, my throat tight. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about freedom, for all of us. As Maggie set down the pen, I felt lighter, like I'd shed that suffocating dress for good. 6 months later, I stood in Harper's new art gallery in Charleston's French Quarter, watching her kids, Lily and Max, arrange wildflowers for the opening. My memoir, Strings of Control, had hit the bestseller list, sparking conversations about family dynamics across the country. Readers wrote to me, sharing their own stories of breaking free, and I felt a purpose I'd never known. Harper handed me a glass of champagne, her ceramic sculptures gleaming under the gallery lights. "I sold 3 pieces tonight," she said, grinning. "And I got a commission for a hotel downtown. Mom hasn't called any buyers this time." Caleb was there, too, across the room, his new beard making him look less like Maggie's polished son and more like himself. He'd left Wentworth Properties to launch his tech startup, a risk Maggie would have never allowed. We caught each other's eyes, sharing a nod. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a quiet understanding of what we'd lost and gained. My phone buzzed. Tessa, Channel 9 now. I flipped on the gallery's TV to see Maggie on a local talk show, discussing her new foundation for families healing from control. She looked older, softer, her voice steady. "I thought love meant holding tight," she said. "But sometimes it means letting go. I learned that the hard way." "Did you know about this?" I asked Harper. She shook her head. "No, but your book changed her, Savannah. Changed all of us." Marcus arrived, carrying advance copies of my next book, a novel about a woman finding her voice. Tucked inside was an envelope from Maggie. I opened it, my hand steady. Inside was a photo of my original wedding dress, preserved at the boutique, and a note. "You were right about the strings, Savannah. You didn't break our family, you made us rebuild it stronger." Thank you for the truth. No strings attached. I tucked the note away, watching Lily and Max chase each other through Harper's artwork, their laughter free and wild. Caleb raised his glass to me, and I returned the gesture, feeling the weight of my old ring long gone. I wasn't ready for forgiveness, but I was ready for something new. Hope, maybe, or the courage to write my next chapter. AS guests arrived for Harper's opening. Marcus showed me an email. International book tour, starting in New York. I smiled, turning to the crowd. To everyone who's followed this journey, thank you. You've walked with me through betrayal, truth, and new beginnings. If my story moved you, hit subscribe and join us, where every page turns pain into power. Keep writing your own truth, and I'll meet you at the next chapter.